Hi, folks. So today we're going to be talking about troubleshooting in Calico. So my name is Joshua Haller, and I'm a technical consultant with Tigera. My background primarily has been in K-12 education, where I've held a number of titles such as Solutions Architect, Network Architect, Security Architect, and Senior Infrastructure Specialist. For fun, a long time ago, I used to work on modding Half-Life 2 games, so I was responsible for the Steam integration as well as a lot of the reverse engineering efforts that went into a lot of the scripting and modding platforms on that front. And then at one point, I had a Tomato router, and I didn't like the fact that SFQ was only available for the platform, so I backported Fairtune Codel as well as Codel back to the Tomato platform. I've also contributed to other projects such as FreeRDP on RAR and other community-led efforts in that regard. So today we're talking about what is Calico Node and what are the various components that make up Calico Node. So currently, the two primary components are Felix, which is the net filter or IP tables aggregator, if you will, that programs, routes, IP sets or network sets, as you know, in Calico, as well as network policy as well. And we also have another container called Bird, and that is a BGP routing daemon. And both are maintained on the project Calico organization on GitHub. So what really is Felix? Well, with Felix, we actually rely a lot on native Linux userland tools to program the nodes. So like you'd be aware of with IP route or net tools previously, we use all these standard tools in Felix itself, and we use Golang bindings to integrate with and use them. So when I start troubleshooting an issue, I usually go from layer 1 all the way up to layer 7. So the very first thing I do is I will look at the ARP table and make sure that that IP address is in there with a MAC address. And if it isn't, then I can skip all the other layers, and I know that fundamentally that node or host that is hosting Calico Node has no connectivity outside of network policy or a network set, and it just is not aware of it because at the layer 2 level, just has no connectivity. After that, I'll typically look at contract and then run through the contract entries. So look for a new, invalid, established, related field in contract and make sure that that connection is actually established. And then from there, I know that at least at the layer 3 and layer 4 level, we're probably okay if it's established, because we know that I can talk to that node and our application has a listening socket and they're communicating. If there's no connectivity or if the application isn't responding, I'll actually use PS and I'll make sure that these programs are actually running on that node itself. And then ultimately, how traditionally with Felix is actually program the firewalls. It uses IP tables and IP sets underneath. So I'll iterate through the raw table, the mangle table, the filter table, and I'll look for my policies that are in there, as well as the IP sets as well. And sorry, I don't want to make this just a slide deck, guys. If you have any questions, comments about how you've troubleshooted issues in the past, just bring it up. It's really an open forum just for us to chat. So with Felix, we actually do have logging that's built into it with different variables that you can set. So we have a log file path where on Calico Node, it stores logging. So by default, Felix will log to var log calico felix.log. And all of the logs that are in there are prefixed with Calico packet. By default, we actually log at the info level. So if you're trying to debug an issue, you would actually set the log severity level with file on the screen or the system logs to debug, or if it's a little too chat for you, You can set it to warning, error, or fatal. On top of this, with Calico Enterprise, you have the option to log your flow logs. So by default, that is in var log, Calico, and flow logs. We also have a DNS policy feature. So Felix will actually maintain a DNS cache file, and that is in var run calico felix-dns-cache.txt. And if you don't like any of these, if you want to put them on like an NFS share or like a SHFS share or anything like that, you can change that by mounting that remote storage, if you will, on that host. On top of this, we also have a new BPF data plane, which makes all those other tools a little more complicated to use. And if there is interest in another session, we can talk about that. So in terms of Bird, if you're running on a native routing platform or with an IP and IP encapsulation platform, we use Bird to establish a full mesh adjacency between all the Calico nodes by default. There is another mode called VXLAN, and that actually does not use Bird. It actually uses Felix to exchange routes. So if you're running in a VXLAN environment, you would not use Bird to troubleshoot. You would use Felix. Then you would look at the routing adjacencies and the logging error messages that are created by Felix and not by Bird. So Bird also logs by default to var log Calico. If you want to change any Bird configuration, you can actually just append configuration to var log Calico and Bird. So Bird has its own logging mechanisms built into it that are outside of Calico. But each protocol that Bird has, which is BGP, OSPF, or pretty much any other implementation, there are different protocol debugging levels. So you can turn on full logging, which is all. You can turn off logging entirely with off, and then you can turn on trace logging, route logging, filter, interfaces, events, and packets. So typically what I've seen is people will turn on logging for states, routes, and filters, just when they're troubleshooting routing issues with Bird. So we also have logging in Calico as well for Bird as part of the BGP config, but it's just the logging that we're collecting from Bird. So it doesn't actually change the state that Bird is logging in. It just collects the information that it has, if that makes sense. So with Calico Enterprise, we actually log BGP telemetry into Prometheus. So we'll log peer connection health, which is the number of peers per status, the routes that have propagated, so the number of route updates that have been imported, the number of routes that have been received. So Prometheus has peer status metrics, and what we log there is the status of it, which is established, idle, connect, active, open sent, open confirm, close, down, and passive. There's different labels that are given per node, so that you have the instance string, you have the status, and then you have the IP version, which is either IPv4 or IPv6 with Bird. Additionally, you have the number of routes imported as well. So the current number of routes successfully imported into the routing table. It's like an increase or decrease depending on how BGP rules process the incoming routes. So if you're using route reflectors or other mechanisms to lessen the amount of adjacencies that Bird is establishing, that will change these metrics. So for instance, you know if a route reflector goes down and changes back to full mesh. If purely the number of route updates increase dramatically in Prometheus, that's actually really helpful. And same thing with going down, you can see that there's an outage for your nodes potentially if you do not have route reflectors. On top of that, we have routes received as well. So when you're troubleshooting issues, we have a readiness check actually for the BGP metric server that's part of Calico Node. So if we can't talk to the BGP metric server, Calico Node will report that's unhealthy with an error of 400. Additionally, if you're trying to troubleshoot the BGP metric server, you can specify the log level to debug, and then you can turn on file logging. It's kind of a double negative, like with your classic Active Directory group policies, but it's Calico disable file logging to false, which means turn on file logging. So if you're troubleshooting performance issues, for instance, with Felix or Typha, we actually have instrumentation built into both Felix and Typha for memory profiling and CPU profiling. As an example, we had a customer come to us with an issue where they said, hey, we're noticing over the course of a week, Calico Node is using 10 megabytes per node of more RAM. Why is that the case? This is a test cluster, nothing's running. And one of my colleagues actually traced it down to a Golang HTTP 2 issue where they continued to add requests into a vector and never released them. So it wasn't a memory leak, but it was a slow, gradual memory increase just from an array or a vector that just never released its references. So I included in the deck where we actually have the code for this. If you know Golang, you can click on these links and go inspect the code, and we can actually do that right now. So we can see here when we send user signal 1, we write out a heap profile of the memory usage that is currently in use by Felix. And if you're troubleshooting a performance issue, you can actually dump a CPU profile as well. So if you notice, for instance, that route updates are taking longer to reconcile or policy is going a bit slowly, you can figure out where exactly in the source code in Felix where things are going wrong, and that will help you file a GitHub issue, or even better, submit a pull request yourself for Felix. So a lot of things that have really helped me personally help our customers with issues is actually the Calico Operator. So there's currently a pull request to merge it into the tree for the next release of Calico. Personally, I don't know if it's going to be merged, but I linked the pull request here where if you'd like, you can track it. We are using it with the enterprise product, and it has been in there for a couple of releases. But as an example, when I was spinning up, let's say, a COPS cluster, and I was having network issues, I just couldn't figure out what was going on. I deleted everything in my environment and just relied on the operators to rebuild my cluster after I deleted all the namespaces, and everything came back up automatically. So it really helped me there. On top of that, we also have an operator troubleshooting script. And these are the commands that we typically ask people who are having problems with to troubleshoot. So we will, for instance, collect everything in Calico system, which currently is Cube system with Calico Node on some older deployments. And I know there's other namespaces out there as well. On top of that, we will collect Calico Node logs. So we'll run IP route on Calico Node. We'll run IP table save to grab the entire save list. The net filter IP tables list that is present on Calico Node. And actually, as part of the script, we'll iterate through every single Calico node. So even if you're not running an operator install today, if you just take parts of the script and just modify either the namespace that they're using or make it applicable to your environment. This is actually incredibly helpful for troubleshooting issues at a single point in time. On top of that, we also collect typo logs as well. So when I'm troubleshooting an issue, I will do a kubectl describe. So let me share. So whenever I'm troubleshooting issues, I'll do like kubectl describe pod Tigera operator. And I'll just look at the events that have happened on this pod and see if there's readiness issues or health issues or anything else that have really come up. On top of that, even just looking at the logs for a pod, I find really helps. We'll just tell you what's going on at a glance. So, yeah, so as an example, there's a log right here saying, build update Tigera status, operation copy fulfilled. That's something to look into, right? I can do the same thing for Calico Node as well, both Haifa and other environments. Kubectl will get pause again. Calico system. Calico Node. Yeah, so if you're troubleshooting BGP issues or issues with rule propagation or rules not being set, take a look at the node. And with the operator, if the node's misbehaving, the first thing you can try is just delete it. Watch it redeploy with the daemon set and see if the same thing happens.
Hey, Josh, can you increase the font, please? Some folks are having trouble seeing. Yep, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so it's really what I found that's really helped me is to describe the pods as well as look at the logs on the pods as well. That's usually the first place I start when someone says that they're having an issue in their Kubernetes environment, whether it be with Calico or even just an app you're deploying. There's a good chance, as long as that app is running in the foreground, you'll be able to look at those logs and maybe gain a deeper understanding. So yeah, as part of Calico Enterprise, we actually have visualized a lot of this. Oh, bash again. If I make Chrome a bit bigger for you guys. Yeah, so this is the Calico Enterprise dashboard. I don't know if everyone's seen this yet or not, so I'm not sure how deep in depth I should go, but anyway, for policies, there's a visualization here of just the different tiers that are in use. Those are Kubernetes policies and Calico Enterprise policies as well here, but we also have flow visualizations provided by FluentD and Elasticsearch. So if you're familiar with Elasticsearch, we're basically just storing all of the flows with Calico Enterprise labels that you've applied to your pods in FluentD, and then we propagate them through FluentD to Elasticsearch, and this is just a visualization of Elasticsearch. But if you're troubleshooting an issue, you can just, for instance, click on status. And then let's jump into this denied traffic. So if we zoom in, loads along to storefront, we'll zoom in. So we can see that there's dropped traffic from storefront to QBNS, and it's being dropped by global platform Twilio integration. Let's go look at that rule. Policies, Twilio integration. That's the policy. Oh, yeah. So we're denying any protocol that does not match Twilio with the type public, but we're allowing it to Twilio.com. So actually, just remove this rule. And before we actually, there's a couple different concepts in Calico Enterprise of previewing and staging your changes. If we preview it, take a look. It's a little long. All right, no biggie. Stage it. I've staged a change for Twilio integration, so it's cloned the rule and it's staged it instead. Now if we go back to flow visualization, go to status, we'll see that's still being dropped. Yeah, so for the purposes of this, actually, you know what? Just delete the rule, delete the policy entirely. Force that. Force, yeah. Jump back here. Turn on label. So eventually, this will update, and we'll see that this rule is no longer matching. We've currently, just on my demo environment, actually set a delay just so we use less CPU by about 5 minutes. But you can crank it all the way down to 10 seconds if you want. So right in your face update, if you will. Then yeah, we also visualize network sets as well in here. So it's basically just a front end for all of the traditional policy that you would write with Calico. Additionally, with Calico Enterprise, I know I showed off a little bit of it today, but if you'd like to try it for free, just go to tigera.io/trial. We have policy auto creation, policy preview and staging, policy troubleshooting tools, policy for external access controls, security team controls, as well as compliance reporting as well. And yeah, thank you very much for your time.